Well, hello, WDJY listeners, 99.1. We are just going to be going crazy today. You won't believe who we have. We have the one and only Jimmy Church. He's the host of the Fade to Black. He's on the Game Changer Network. Come on, what a name of that, huh? I hope he made that up himself. Hope it's his network. You know? But wow, what a great show, you guys. We're going to get into everything. We're going to learn who actually is Jimmy Church, which is going to be probably the most interesting part of the whole interview, I'd say. And also, we're going to get into the alien aspects of it. In fact, we're going to get deep into it and some of the philosophies. And one thing I love to do, because, you know, if you watch ever the television shows, and he does television, he's on the History Channel and everything else out there, and you know, they almost like they repeat the same things over and over again. He's like, yeah, it's a flying disc in the air. And, you know, but I don't want to go there. I want to advance our conversation. I want to advance our conversation to the point where, what if they're here, they've already been here for a long time. And, you know, and there's perhaps maybe some insidious and not so good motivations behind this situation. How do we remedy this? What do we do? How do we reconcile this? Where do we go? And we're going to be, guys, we had 90 minutes of Jimmy Church today, so it's going to be an incredible show. All right, so without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about our guest today, Wahid. You know, I know you may not know all about Jimmy, but I have been following his career for a long time, and he has done, in fact, when I start reading this, you're like, oh my God. Jimmy Church is a radio and television host for the Game Changer Network, like I said earlier, a premiere and iHeartRadio and History Channel, right? Church is also a host of the Fade to Black, which is really cool radio show he's going on the Game Changer Network. Syndicated on KJCR as well as KGRA, iHeartRadio, TSL, Tunlin, as I think it's called, Spreaker. Along with the host of these live shows, Fade to Black, Jimmy is also guest host on Coast to Coast AM with guess who? George Norrie.
Yeah,
I know, right? And he also co-stars on History Channel, Hangar One, and UFO Files and Time Travel Conspiracy. We're going to get into all of that today, man. I mean, we're going to go in deep. Yeah. This is going to be such a hot show. In fact, I'm going to have to play it back over and over and over again. You know, also, Church is also a star and host of the brand new series on the History A&E. Right? Without further ado, let me bring in the man, the one and only Jimmy Church. How you doing, brother?
Great to be here, Tim. United Intentions. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That voice alone, I feel like God's talking to me, you know? I mean, am I looking okay, God?
Noah, you must build an ark.
See, there it goes. I mean, one of those shows. So, Jimmy, I'll tell you, I loved meeting you in person the other, a month ago out in Conscious Life Expo, and you and George Norrie and the whole gang there, you know, and just as neat because I knew Daniel for a while, and we kind of befriended each other, and I just love him to death. And he's kind of considered him like the mayor out there, and everybody knows him, and he's been doing it for probably forever for most people there. And you really, God, you know, I mean, you got your whole crew there. It's everybody in black. I mean, I just thought it was like you had army action going on. I mean, you took charge. You're running the shows. You're doing you're hosting all that. I think you were singing. You got George Norrie to sing or something. I don't know what was going on with that, but you're just you really have a presence to you. And I just was like, wow, man, Jimmy really is engaged here. Now, do you get loose like that at other conventions, or is this more of a one that you feel like your tribe's there?
Well, and thank you for that. But what is for me and what we do, conferences like that, especially the Conscious Life Expo, which is, you know, it's humongo. You know, there's 15,000 attendees there for that. But for us, when I get there, the vibe is so cool. I'm able to just engage with everybody. The thought process is about knowledge and consciousness, and you know, you check your ego at the door. Yeah. And everybody goes in with this free will, freedom of thought thing that goes on. And I'm electrified by that, and I'm able to just go up and talk and hang out. You know, I'm there to work for sure. You know, what I do at most conferences is I'm able to MC and host and be that person that everybody interfaces with. So that's an adrenaline push for me. So I'm ready to go. But I get to hang out, and the vibe is what it's all about. And I get taken over by that too. And you know, I have a personality where I'm very gregarious. I love to talk to people, and so I'm in a studio, nearly 7 days a week by myself broadcasting. But I go to conferences and now I'm able to hang out with everybody and that comes out of me. Sometimes I can't control it, but it's a lot of fun.
No, you're great and wonderful. And it is, I bet your voice is probably a blessing and a curse at the same time, because everybody wants you to probably do a voiceover or something, We got to have Jimmy on there, that Wolfman Jack voice, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Okay, there's actually two sides to that coin. One, I'll be walking through a crowd. Somebody will be on their phone, with their wife or husband and go, Jimmy Church is walking by. Hold on, Jimmy, say hi to my husband. Right? And they just want me to insult, hey, what's up? But the other side of it is I've always had this voice going back to when I was a kid.
Really?
And I didn't dig it. Right? My other friends had the normal voices, and I wanted to be like Timmy, my neighbor. But I had this voice when I was 5. And I remember it would happen all the time. My dad would, bring company over to the house and introduce his company, his friends, to his kids. And he would say, this is my son, Mike. Hey, guys. This is my daughter, Carol. Hey, guys. This is my son, Jimmy. What's up? And they would jump back like, whoa. And I would, and it would I felt a little bit out of place.
Right.
And I was always the loudest guy in the room,
right.
And it was something that I fought. But now here I am, and finally, there's a reason to use this thing.
You missed the Greg Brady moment. I guess you never had that experience of the voice changeover, right?
Oh man, I watched that episode over and over again. I was so connected to Greg. Yeah, absolutely. When it's time to change, you have to rearrange. So there you go.
I love it. Oh man, great. So since we're talking about your childhood here, let's stay there for a little bit. How was a Jimmy Church created in the first place? Honestly, did you come out of the womb questioning why to everything? Or, when was this curiosity developed?
The answer is yes. Yes, I came out of the womb that way. My mom, my parents were both musicians. That's how they met. My father's career was a band leader for the Army band. So he was a musician, a creative guy, still is. And still a musician, still alive. And my mom, who passed away 2 years ago, but she was really into the crazy stuff when I was growing up. And she was into ghostwriting and Edgar Cayce books and the Ouija board. And I grew up watching her do all of these things. And when I was old enough to read, I started to pull these Edgar Cayce books off the shelf. I'm talking about, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old.
Wow.
And then she got Eric Von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, and I got that book. And this is probably 70, 71, 72. I got to go and see Chariots of the Gods when it was playing in the theater, and I went with my mom. So I knew that there was something else going on out there. I'll tell you a really funny story.
Okay.
One night, I'll make this quick.
No, take your time.
I would go get ready for bed. And as we were getting ready for bed, again, I'm 8 years old. I'm 7, 8 years old. My mom would have a ream of paper, blank, set up on the dining room table. And she would start to ghostwrite. I would go to bed. I would watch her looking up at the ceiling and writing on a sheet of paper. She's not watching what she's writing.
Right.
And I would wake up in the morning to get my cereal and get ready for school. And that ream of paper was now flipped over, and it was 500 pages written.
Oh my God.
Right? So, and I said to my mom one day, I was like, what are you writing? She goes, I don't know. What? I'm 8 trying to figure this out. But that was my mom.
Wow.
So absolutely out of the womb, I was told that the world is not what it seems. Right. And I thought everybody's mom was like my mom. Right? I thought it was going on in everybody's neighborhood. And so I was okay with that. And there you go. I would go to the library and new school, whatever. We were in the Army, so we were always in a new school every couple of years, new city, new country. And I would go to the library and go to the U section and try to find books on UFOs. and that's my earliest memory. So yeah, I've been studying this and this aspect, lost history, Egypt, consciousness, transcendental meditation, all of these, the pyramid power, all of these things that were going down in the 70s. Those were my subjects. And of course, we had the space program going on at the same time.
Right.
And we all had our favorite astronauts, and it was about, bases on the moon and hotels orbiting the Earth and exploration and flying cars. That was what we grew up with. So yeah, I was fully engaged. Both feet firmly planted right there from the get-go.
Grounded. You must have been a nightmare in school, though. I mean, how could you listen to somebody teach you math or English when you're thinking about what your mom's writing and aliens? I mean, were you a good student, or what kind of student were you?
I love school.
Did you?
I love school now.
Yeah.
There is nothing like school and learning, and certainly that's what I do on Fade to Black and Coast to Coast every night. Right. Is sharing the knowledge and trying to figure things out. But back in, I had this teacher. Her name was Mrs. Lafferty. Never forget her. In fourth grade. And she would read books to us. And one semester, she read us Madeline Ingle, right? Wrinkle in Time. And I was right there. Now, I thought it was nonfiction, right? I thought, and I'm listening. And so... No, my teachers were right there. I really felt like that was the world, that there was this great, fun thing out there that wasn't about the status quo. I really believe that, and I still do.
Right. Well, maybe school even back then in the 70s probably a little bit different than it is today. I mean, they don't teach critical thinking much anymore, and you can't even. And back then, I was probably a little more freer. Who knows? I mean, what's your take on the education system right now, from where you were to what you're seeing now?
Yeah, the big lie, right?
Yeah.
The big lie. The more that I find out, and, we have a big audience, and the audience, not only with Fade to Black and Coast to Coast, we're talking about millions of people that listen every single week. Right. But then you have History Channel and Ancient Aliens and the shows that I do and Hangar One and all of those things. That audience is very, very large, and they are starting to figure out, as they hear us and researchers, present this stuff, they are starting to figure out that what they have been taught in school is not really what happened. And it goes on so many different directions. Yeah. And it is lost history, and it is aliens, and it is false flags and consciousness and parallel worlds and time travel and all of these things, right? But the science today is starting to show us that our alternative community was correct. Yeah. And for me, it really happened. One of the big game changers was Göbekli Tepe. Now, Göbekli Tepe, which is a megalithic site on the Syrian-Turkish border on the Turkish side, that was discovered back in 1995. But what was most important about Göbekli Tepe was it wasn't supposed to exist. Mm. We have been told that history started in Egypt at 3000 BC, and everything happened after that. We talk about Rome, we talk about Greece, ancient Sumer, Mesopotamia are not really listed as like a side note. But the focus in our education system was always Egypt, and I'm cool with that. Right? But if it was all supposed to happen at 3000 BC, which was quarrying and moving these big rocks and Copper Age and the wheel and all of these things. But then Göbekli Tepe shows up in 1995, and it was built, confirmed by science, 7,000 years before Egypt. It wasn't supposed to exist. Yeah. So now we have this dogma changing, paradigm shifting situation here where all of the historians and archaeologists and anthropologists now have to answer for something that was built 7,000 years before Egypt. And by all standards, Göbekli Tepe is as beautiful, artistic, intricate, engineered, just as sophisticated as anything that we have found around the world and in Egypt. But that didn't happen for another 7,000 years. So where did this intelligence come from?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was at 10,000, 12,000 BC. Seriously, we're talking about a man walking around wearing animal skins. How were they able to construct this? So it proved to us and all of us that our education system needs to really reset themselves and start talking about our own history in different terms. And that's what's so magical about doing Fade to Black and History Channel and Coast to Coast, because it allows us to step back and go, we're not the crazy ones anymore, are we? Right?
Yeah.
And our audience gets that pat on the back. They are not crazy. Right. We are right. We've been right about this. We've been talking about this forever. Now we have this. Now what you say, education system, right? So there you go. And I'm very proud of all of this.
No, listen, what you're doing is basically you're bringing history back into history, because I can't believe hardly anything, at least what I've been taught growing up. And that's why I stopped watching the news. I don't even read a lot of different books unless I know who really the person wrote the book or about the person, because it's so it's so perverted, and it's so taken out of context. And the Dead Sea Scrolls, and you don't hear about the Book of Thomas until, and you have all these different things, and it's like, wow, you have to question everything. And I remember David Icke was saying that, you have to be today's day, you have to be you have to be open-minded and light on your feet, because you just don't know what we think we know, and it's probably not accurate. And it's only a certain spectrum of what the truth is. But when you have this type of evidence that you explore like you do on A&E and History Channel, and just from being a curious cat since coming out of the womb, you're going to challenge the status quo. And I agree with you. Thanks to quantum physics, thanks to other handful of things, our science now is starting to catch up to some of this old religion and spirituality piece that was kind of get lost into whatever, and our books are being challenged more than ever before. I mean, epigenetics alone is challenging so much in our biosciences, and on top of that, like you, Jimmy, you see, I'm sure, just. And I don't know how much of an impact this had, but it's definitely a recognition of, hey, these people aren't crazy. They just acknowledged on mainstream media not too long ago about the alien piece of it, the UFOs and the Black Money Project. I mean, did you see that being a big impact right now, or do you think that's kind of got blown over because everybody has ADD today?
Right. Well, that's a very interesting point, and I've been driving this home for a few years now, but I'm able to really, really push this, which is science is now overlapping with the spiritual and the supernatural. And that overlapping is right in front of us. And the more that science pushes, and technology and computers pushes what they are doing, it verifies where we are on the other side of the fence. But what's most interesting here, and that's not even the most interesting part, when we start to look at, you just brought up quantum physics, quantum mechanics. Silicon Valley right now is working so hard at qubits, quantum computing, and how it works in its fundamental form. But what is really nuts here is Silicon Valley is saying things like parallel worlds, right? And so when they say that, and we have all of these tech billionaires talking about us living in a computer simulation and our lives are ones and zeros, we have to stop for a second and ask ourselves, why are they saying that? Mm-hmm. They are saying that because they live in a very pragmatic black and white world, right? It's code writing. Mm-hmm. It's mechanics of making a computer work. Has nothing to do with the supernatural and parallel worlds. So what are they doing talking about this? They're talking about it because the way that a quantum computer works and the way that a qubit operates to make that system work is that qubit changes its state in another dimension with another qubit out there that goes on in infinite in these parallel worlds. These qubits on these chips are very few, right? They'll have 128, not millions and millions of transistors that we have on standard computer chips. They just have a few, but they are able to change their state all the way out into these parallel worlds, and they take advantage of that. And so that they understand now that the only way that this can work is that if quantum mechanics and quantum theory states that the multi-world theory must exist and parallel worlds must exist, and this is how these chips operate, they are telling their engineers, okay, there's parallel worlds out there, right? And these qubits change their state. And this is how we operate this system. Now they have to tell their employees, not only their engineers, but they have to explain themselves to the press,
right,
how this works. Well, wait a minute here. Science in Silicon Valley says parallel worlds do exist. And if that domino falls, which it has, if that domino falls, then everything else falls into place, right?
Yeah.
So everything that we have talked about.
Yeah.
It is an amazing time for us to sit back and watch this start to play out.
Yeah.
And I'm right in the center of it. And for me and for my audience, I'm able to go, hey, you know what? This is what's going on. You're not crazy, right? We are now the normal, and the rest of the country out there that blindly drives to work every day, you know, going to work, coming home, watching the news, going to bed, following their sports teams, not questioning their very reality, right? They are the ones that are crazy. We are the one, and they're going to get woken up to this, and it's happening right now.
And it is. It's divine insanity. And I'll tell you what, I think that what you just said about the qubits changing the states, you know, is almost equivalent. I'm thinking about like the electrons, how they disappear and they appear. Who knows where they go? I mean, could they go to another parallel universes? Who knows? You know, because
they do.
Yeah, right.
And so that's the amazing part about this.
Right.
But I'll tell you something else. You brought up the news, right, and how you don't watch the news anymore.
Yeah.
That's another very important part about consciousness and the status of the world right now. We just went through this fake news situation.
Ugh.
Now, when we went through that, our community, you, myself, and other hosts out there, we've been talking about George Orwell in 1984 and the Ministry of Truth and what we have been told every single day is a lie, and we need to be careful about that. And I've been saying, I take the news, I flip the story over 180 degrees, and I look at it, and now I know that I'm closer to the truth on this news. And I've had fun with that. Well, when this fake news thing came out, and how it was done, not only on the mainstream media with Fox and CNN and BBC and RT and you pick the network,
sure,
but social media and the fake news feeds that were coming through. Well, our community didn't have a problem with that. We knew this was always going on, right? Project Mockingbird and the CIA and all of that. We knew about this. It was the rest of the country and the rest of the world that had to wake up realizing that what they were reading wasn't true and their emotions were being changed based on fakeness. Suddenly, they are looking back at us going, well, you guys were right. And it's a tough pill to swallow. But it also helps us in our community, this whole science and technology thing that is starting to merge. And the world is now what it seems.
It's a complete validation. I can't tell you how many people came up to me because I've been talking aliens and all this type of stuff that you've just been discussing for probably 30 years now. Not so much on radio, but just in my circles. And, you get that kind of, yeah, that's Tim, and that's he's a great guy, but sometimes he gets a little crazy, right? And I'm like, I'm fine, because to me, I'm a truth seeker, and all truth seekers are they'd rather be seen as crazy than compromise and not seeking truth, right? And we're putting a puzzle together. It's like we're trying to define our reality here, and it's just like a race in many ways for people who are truth seekers. Some people couldn't care less about that, right? I don't care. Just give me a good steak and a nice woman and a cigar. Who knows, But it's when you're caught up into that, and you are a truth seeker, and you do, and I remember that time period. I remember they were chasing, what was his name? Not Snowden, but the other guy. He was leaking all this information out about Clinton, and people are hearing about satanic pedophilia for the first time ever, and I've been discussing this for years and years and years, right? And I was like, wow, people are like, maybe there is something to this. You're right, but I did not appreciate that. Probably not. Well, you probably did, but I could not appreciate that, Jimmy, till you just mentioned that wow, these folks were totally in the dark, and we rocked the world. I'm like, that was the rocking the world. That was nothing, man. That was this little skip and a jump, right? Wait till you see this what's coming next, right? I mean, were you that you kind of realized that their worlds are being rocked, and that, wow, this is maybe a little too much for people to handle?
Well, this is probably going to be a little shocking to some.
Yeah.
The news that is of a concern on both coasts, New York and Los Angeles, where we tend to be a little bit more alert. But when you look at the rest of the country on the inside, they are not paying attention to the fake news bombshell. Yeah. They're not paying attention to a lot of things. They are concerned, and that's okay, but they are concerned with other things, and they may not be as alert and awake to this. Because when you go out and you talk to my parents, my adopted family, it lives in the middle of the Midwest. They know what I do, right, but they don't listen to it. And I can't talk to my parents about the fake news world or things like that, because they don't have a concern with it, and neither does anybody else in their neighborhood. Yeah. So that's we have to think about it like that in those terms. Is it alarming to you and I? Absolutely. Are we awake to it? Sure we are. Are our audiences? Absolutely. But by and large, the rest, they don't care. No. And if you did make them aware of it, they wouldn't go and take the time to look into it, because it doesn't fit in their little world and their bubble. Right. They continue on with life, and it's something that we have to continually battle. I don't know what is going to wake up everybody. That one moment, I don't know what it's going to be. I thought that the fake news scenario was something that was a serious game changer. Yeah, potential. But they covered up well, though. They handled it well. It was in the media, and the media was concerned about it. Certainly, it went all the way to the White House, and it was something that was a subject that was out there. But today, I don't know. I don't know if it's stuck in people's memory. I'll give you another example.
Well, before you do, Jimmy, let's take a quick break, and then I want to hear about this example, because it's all about waking people up. And I have a feeling, my spider senses tells me Jimmy's going to have a potential example that may help with this process here. We'll be right back. We've been talking to Jimmy Church from Fade to Black. He's also on Coast to Coast. This guy does everything, television, you name it. You catch him at jimmychurchradio.com, jimmychurchradio.com. We'll be right back and be talking all about UFOs. All right, welcome back to the United Intentions Foundation. We're talking on the Good Intentions Show with the one and only Jimmy Church. He is a host of Fade to Black and so many other things. He's on the Game Changer Network. I'm going to ask him that question, too, if that's his network that he created. Also, he's on Coast to Coast with George Norrie. He co-stars on History Channel. This guy's started his own series, I think, on History, on A&E. I mean, this guy's everywhere. And he has a voice to go anywhere he wants to go. Well, welcome back, Jimmy. And we were just talking about, before I get lost on the topic here, you wanted to give us a point about another example of perhaps the media and waking people up.
Well, and amnesia, right? So we just went through all of these sexual allegations situation. And it seemed like every day somebody was, being called out and accused, and a career and a life was ruined. And in most cases, rightly so. I get that. But today, it's disappeared. It's completely gone. We hear about things once in a while, but it dominated the news cycle for the last 6 months of 2017. Mm-hmm. Now it's gone away. Yeah. That amnesia, because of the way that the media manipulates the population, and the news cycle is so quick. It used to be, we called it a 24-hour news cycle. It's more like a 24-second news cycle today. Yeah. And the headlines get bigger and bigger and more dominant than the day before, which forces people into forgetting what just happened. If we look at the events closing down in 2017, again, I even have the same amnesia because of the dominance of it. But we had 6 hurricanes devastating the Caribbean. And Houston, right? Mm-hmm. And Florida, forgot about it. It was the next set of headlines that came in the next day and the next day and the next day that were bigger than the day before, and it causes everybody's heads to spin. And I would go on the air and I would take calls. What was the headline yesterday? Well, I don't remember. What's the headline today? Well, today it's Harvey Weinstein or whatever. Yeah. Oh, then I guess you've forgotten about Puerto Rico. Oh, that's right. And it's crazy how we have gotten into this cycle. So, again, I'm not so sure if the speaking of these important subjects, maybe it's great in our circle, but the rest of the country has other things to do. Yeah. And I don't think they're as concerned as we think they are.
Oh no, they just like we just said earlier. They just acknowledged. I mean, the first time ever, the mainstream media acknowledged UFOs exist. CIA's been covering up, and it's gone. I mean, no one cares. So what? I mean, I agree with you 100%. I don't know what the wake up call is going to be, but it's going to have to be something pretty outstanding. And I'm not even saying if you see a giant cigar spaceship over your head and even the media picks it up, may not be enough. I really don't know what it would be, other than I have to say this. I truly believe our awakening is going to have to come from within. And I think a lot of this kind of external shiny objects that we get caught up into is a precursor of showing us where we need to go, because we're not going to find our answers outside of ourselves, even though we may think, in my opinion, even though we may think we will. But I think once we go within, I think things become clearer. At least for me, I seems to be that's the direction I'm going in. And in fact, you call your studio the bunker, and that's a serious issue to be thinking about. I mean, there are bunkers everywhere in the United States, everywhere in the world right now, for whatever reasons, for whatever agendas. As I'm sure you're very familiar with William Cooper's stuff and work and everything he's done. Bill Cooper. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. What's the question? Because I have 5 comments ready to go.
All right, there you go. The question is, what do you think it's going to take to pull people back in? But jump on it. Go ahead. What do you got?
Well, okay, and it is called the bunker because it is. We are underneath a parking structure in downtown Burbank, 4 floors down, and so I feel very secure down here. But and I have to surface once in a while to see what time of day it is because I have no windows or anything. But this is what is most fascinating about the events of December 16th, 2017, when disclosure started to happen. And, Tom DeLonge and what he had done with To the Stars was finally revealed. New York Times, CNN, BBC, Fox, ABC, NBC, everybody ran with the story and ran with it for about 2 or 3 weeks. Very cool. What was most impressive about that for me wasn't the Pentagon program, and it wasn't Louis Elizondo or Dave Fravor, the pilot, or any Steve Justice and Chris Mellon and the CIA. All of that was great, but that wasn't what was most important. What was most important was that the mass media took the story and finally ran with the UFO subject. They've never done that before in the history of network television. They have not. So that is what I'm most appreciative of, that this subject, a very important one, was exposed to the world like that in grand fashion for the very first time. But that's only a piece to the puzzle. If we back up, and you're asking me what would it take? Well, I don't believe that there is going to be this shock with the planet, because there's been a pretty effective plan in place over the last few years. One of them is science discovering exoplanets. And that news now happens on a weekly basis. Another exoplanet has been found, possibility of alien life, right? And they always plug that in there. So it gets supplanted into, the frontal lobes. People are remembering this. And then there's the other stuff that happens in between. Fast radio burst, right? We've got radio contact with another star system. So that gets leaked out every week in addition to the exoplanets. A couple of months ago, and this is no joke, a couple of months ago, it was discovered that on the outside of the ISS, the International Space Station, they found living bacteria that had accumulated from space. Now, wait a minute here. What are they suggesting? That what they are saying is that there is alien life floating around in the vacuum of space, and it's everywhere. We've collected it from the outside of the ISS, and we've now brought it down to planet Earth. That's alien life, right? So that's in there. It's all of this stuff, laser contact and the possibility of water on Mars or Moon or Mercury and habitable this, and we're going to be building that. It's this little pieces of information. They call it the drip, drip, drip.
Yeah.
But as long as this continues, when the big one happens, it's going to be so what?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and that it's a brilliant plan if you think about it.
Yeah.
I know you're on the East Coast. You're in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I love Atlanta, by the way. Atlanta is a beautiful city and been there many, many times. So let's talk about your famous street, Peachtree.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. See, I've been to Atlanta. Are you?
That's proof right there. I was doubting him until he said Peachtree.
Okay. So the traffic on that street in the morning and at night is as devastating as any place in the country. Right?
Absolutely.
Am I correct?
Absolutely.
I have been to Atlanta. I've been stuck in that traffic. So let's say it's 5 p.m., stuck in traffic on Peachtree, and a UFO comes in and lands right in the middle and blocks traffic. Nobody can get into the mall. Right. And see, I've been to Atlanta and nobody can move around. Nobody can get home. Nobody can do anything. And there's this UFO blocking traffic. How long is that going to be news? Well, it's going to be news for a few minutes. Right? Impressed. Wow. The news shows up in live video feeds. And then after about 15 minutes, somebody's going to get out of their car and yell, "Get that thing off the road." I got to get home. It looks cool, but I got to get home. That's what I think. I think that big moment is not going to be the big moment that everybody thinks. Yeah. Because I've been acclimated to it.
Listen,
and I'm okay with that, by the way. Right. I'm totally okay with it. I don't think we're going to go into despair and religions collapse and the economy collapses and Wall Street freaks out and people are going to be running around in the street wondering all these great, fantastic questions and feel lost. No, I think it's going to be quite the opposite. I really do.
Well, no, listen, I definitely see your point there. In fact, I think, the aliens are already amongst us and been for, thousands of years. And this big game of looking outside of above or outside of the earth as aliens coming, maybe we already been infiltrated. Maybe we are part of big experiment, and there's a lot we could talk about too. But I want to ask this question: out of all the different ufologists or folks who are investigating UFOs, from David Icke to Wilcock to the whole work you've seen, even Bill Cooper, the ones that have you ever met Bill Cooper? William Cooper?
No. He was shot and killed before. That was almost 20 years ago now, 2001.
Yeah, sure.
So
out of all these names, who do you find, in your opinion, probably is closest to what you think the truth is?
Ooh, man. You know what?
Yeah.
None of them. None of them. And I'll tell you why. Yeah. There's a quote that I have repeated over the last year. I had Giorgio Tsoukalos on the show. He's a dear friend. I love him to death. And, from Ancient Aliens, the guy with the hair. Yeah. And I had him on the show last year. And because of our dialogue that we have between us, we talk very, very freely. And I asked him that question about what would it take, what would happen that day when something gets exposed, about the UFO question. And this was his answer. And this is the answer I'm going to give to you to answer your question. He said, when the 3-mile wide mothership lands and ET steps down and starts talking to us, we will find out at that moment we had it all wrong. Every researcher, every author, every experiencer, every contactee, every abductee, everything that has been presented, we will find out at that moment that we were all wrong. And I don't know what the answer is. But that's what, and I had to step back and think about that for a second.
Right.
Of course he's right. So how do I deal with that with all of the researchers that I have? I've done thousands of interviews, right? I've interviewed everybody. And so for my audience, where over the course of a month or a week, where they will hear conflicting opinions on the research night after night after night. So what do they do with that information? And what do I do with it? Because I'm at the center of it, right? I'm collecting it. What do I do with it? We have to take it all, put it in, it's like poker chips, push it to the center of the table and analyze, and figure out what resonates with us. Everybody can't be right. And probably everybody is wrong.
Right.
And I'm okay with that, too, as well, because I have had my own experiences. I have, and I've been very public about them.
Right.
And one of the most profound things that happened with us, Rita and I, this was 3 years ago, Contact in the Desert. And we're at the George Norrie birthday party. Mm-hmm. And there's probably 200 people at this birthday party, and I'm emceeing with George, and we're having a good time. And then my wife, Rita, gets a text on her phone. UFOs in the sky right now. What? And I turned to security there, and I said, what's going on with this? Where is this location? And he says, okay, follow me. Okay, so, he takes us down, and it was at this place it was a cliff, Orion's Lookout. And and people are running. I'm like, wow, this is great. What's going on, right? So we get up, and as we walk up the hill, we get to the edge of the cliff, and there's about 200 people there in the dark. Yeah. And I look up, and I see this star move. Right. And I see it move in the sky and then stop. I was like, what? And at that moment, somebody hands me a pair of night vision. They stick a microphone in my face. I'm on a PA system, and now everybody knows I'm there, and they're yelling and screaming, and there's this vibe going on. And I just saw a planet move and disappear. Right? I'm just, whoa. And off to my left, this giant, and this is a famous story now, but this is how it went down. This green chrome ball, about a mile away, is moving away from us at ground level along the desert floor, and it takes about 5 minutes. I'm not going to tell the whole thing, but It takes off and flies up, and it's giant, and I'm looking at it with these night vision binoculars. I can see it up close, and people are are hitting it with lasers, and as the lasers cross this thing, I see this sparkle. So it's a solid ship, right? It's a solid something.
Right.
And it goes all the way across, and in 5 minutes, it disappears, goes all the way up into the stars, turns into a pinprick, stops, and then turns left and just goes into space.
Wow.
Now, wait a minute, right? Whoa. Let's stop and analyze what's going on. And the CBC is there. They've got 4 cameras. They're shooting a documentary.
Oh, wow.
They happen to be there with us. So it got documented. Great. Fantastic. As Rita and I were walking down the hill, I turned to Rita and I said, I need to talk about this. Do you think that if Wolf Blitzer was here, right? If Anderson Cooper was here and they saw this and they had their cameras here, would they talk about this on the news the next night? And Rita said no. And she's right. Even something that significant, would it be enough to push the mainstream media into it or to cause some of these show hosts out there to speak about their own experience publicly? Right. And I knew at that moment I was going to do just that. So on Monday, after the conference, I'm talking to Premier Radio, one of my producers over there, and she says, so Jimmy, what are you going to do on Coast this Friday? Who's your guest? And I said, my guest is me. She said, what? And I tell her about what just happened. And she goes, exactly. Yes, do it. So I went on Coast. And if you think about this, on a Friday night, the massive audience that we have, and not only is it a big audience, but the other networks are listening, right? You never know who's listening across.
Oh, they listen. They listen. Don't worry.
They're listening, right? Yeah. So I went on the air and I said, I don't care. I don't care. I am going to tell you what just happened this past weekend. And I told the whole story for an hour, very detailed about how it went down. And then I opened up the phone lines. And I did it not for me, Tim. What was important here was those 200 witnesses that were standing on the edge of that cliff that saw it too. I needed them to have that support.
Yeah,
I needed our community to know that myself in the position that I have, that I am willing to absolutely tell the truth.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what's most important.
It is.
And I will always support this community. So when it comes down to things like this, what will it take? This was the most profound experience one could have.
Absolutely.
And the world needs to know about it. I'm so glad that it was shot on so many video cameras. And you can see the video, it's out there on the net. And you can hear me in the PA system. And I'm describing what's going down at that moment. You can hear everybody yelling and screaming. It's right there. And it was documented. So there is something going on. And I'm not sure, when we talk about disclosure, I'm not sure that I need the government to say something. I'm not sure that I need the flying saucer on the White House lawn.
Yeah.
I know what I saw and I experienced. And I don't need somebody to tell me that it was a satellite or it was our technology. It may have been. It may have been.
Hey, well, listen, it could have been, but, I sort of maybe seen an alien, although Wolf Blitzer may be an alien, but I sort of seen an alien. I think that's just good enough evidence there to say, hey, and to share that with the world is something. When we get back from break here, Jimmy, another break here, let's talk a little about what your take is on aliens among us. If you think they've been here for a long time, they're still here underground, wherever they may be, other dimensions. And then, of course, if there isn't, what their agenda is. And if their agenda is perhaps not the most favorable agenda, what's a resolution here? Some of your thoughts inside Jimmy Church's mind on the alien question. We'll be right back. All right, we are back with Jimmy Church from Fade to Black. He's on the Game Changer Network. Come on, he couldn't pick 3 better two titles there, the Fade to Black and Game Changer Network, right? All right, and you can catch him at jimmychurchradio.com, jimmychurchradio.com. We are talking about everything today, aliens, what's going on, and a question I asked before the break was, Jimmy, do you believe is aliens are outside of us, outside of this world that we're in, or do you believe they're already here, been here, and they've been manipulating society, as Bill Cooper would say, as said in his books. They've been involved in our politics, been involved in our abductions and so on down the line here, right here on Earth.
Yes, the answer is very simple. Yes, they're here now. They always have been. Look, if you think about what we have here, this beautiful blue, glowing paradise, right? And you flew by in a flying saucer, and you're looking out the window, and you see this, you're stopping. Right? You're stopping. And we've only been here in our version right now for about 100 years of electricity and lights, and lighting up this planet. And if you go back maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 years, very short window that this version of us has been here. But the rest of the universe is 15 billion years old, approximately, allegedly. Yeah. Let's go with that. Right. So if anybody jump-started us by 10,000 years, 100,000 years, 1,000,000 years, of which there are countless civilizations out there, right? We now know that in our own Milky Way, there are 1 trillion stars. So how many planets are around those stars? How many? The numbers boggle the mind, and that's just our galaxy.
Right.
There are trillions of galaxies, right? So if we look at it in those terms, then not only have countless civilizations been here, countless, they have known about us. It's a very simple thing. What are we doing right now? We're trying to find ET. Yeah. That's what we do. Right? That's what we're trying to. Well, ET's been doing the same thing, and they found us many, many, many times. And the best example I can give for any of that is religion. If you go back through millennia, all of those community leaders, religious leaders, of towns and cities and encampments, they came back and said, okay, I just spoke with God. And God says, he spoke to me from up there. He's teaching us things. And this is what we need to do now. Well, wait a minute here. Today, if we spoke in those terms, it would be an ET connection, right? Because that's the way we look at it.
Yeah.
So certainly the possibility exists that all of this communication that we have done over millennia has been communication with ET, at least some of it. Yeah. And I'm okay with that too as well. It only makes sense. Yeah. If you take angels and God in the Bible and insert UFOs and ET, it's the same story.
Yeah.
There you go. And I'm sticking to it.
Well, it says it in the different books too, and in the past, whether it's the Bible, Old Testament, it talks about it. Just got to kind of pick the right word out. But before we go on we're going to close out for our FM listeners here. Hope you enjoyed having Jimmy on the line. However, if you want to continue, we're going to be talking about MK Ultra. We're going to be talking about what the resolution is, if there is an insidious plan, perhaps aliens who've been here. How do we resolve this ultimately? What is it? What is the end game here? And so if you want to listen to that, you could go on to our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/UI Radio Network, and you could hear the full story, because Jimmy and I are about to get down and dirty about some of these heavy topics from from the MK Ultra projects to the satanic aspect, the SRA network, and you name it. We're going to go there, and let's check it out, see what's going on. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys later. All right.
Thank you so much. Great conversation. United Intentions Foundation.
All right.